Hey, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. This is Dan at Unicorn Riot. So we're still waiting for Court to come back. The Court feed was playing funny music and is now not running. So there's nothing yet from Court at the moment. We're going to run some footage from last night's protest down outside the courthouse. Akecheta and Nico were out there. There was a vehicle attack that I mentioned earlier that happened, I believe, around 5, which where a vehicle went up on the sidewalk and went through a whole crowd of people, and there were definitely some injuries, is what we understand. So that was pretty shocking. And obviously Deonna Marie got killed in Minneapolis earlier this year as well. So it's really been rough. It's a very bad situation with vehicles. So that's in there, but there's also speeches and stuff, but content advisory, just be aware that's disturbing material that we had streamed, live. This is basically from the stream live last night. This is just the, higher resolution recording of the video. But there's also some really good remarks in the video from, families of survivors of police violence, families of victims of police violence. And so, that kind of draws out the larger community context here around this issue. So I think that's very helpful. So again, as soon as Court comes back, we'll come back live. We are hoping to hear from, I believe, one of our reporters during the afternoon break as well. So, stay tuned to the afternoon break. We'll have something special for that. Stay tuned. We really appreciate supporting our work. Take a look at our website, unicornriot.ninja. We've got, Court might finally be coming back here, perhaps. So we've got a Kim Potter trial landing page. We've got a new post, families of loved ones killed by police demand justice on the eve of the Kim Potter trial. So I think Court may actually finally be coming back. Thank you for joining us. And again, on the afternoon break, we'll be running hopefully an interview with one of our folks, and or rather hearing or kind of a report from one of our folks, and then also footage from the protest from last night. At this point, I don't believe that we're not, I think, expecting more live coverage of any protests tonight, but if that changes, we'll let you know. Thanks for joining us, everyone. So if Court is still not coming back, then I'm going to run the protest video, but I will pull it back as soon as Court comes in.
We'll say a few words and we'll get started on the march. We are here standing in solidarity with Daunte's family. We have a bunch of the families here that have lost loved ones at the hands of law enforcement here to stand in solidarity. We have all of you guys that have come out this evening, and we are very thankful and grateful that you guys are here to stand up for Daunte's life. And hopefully we get this woman exactly what she deserves out of this situation. We do not believe that this was an accidental situation. We believe that from listening to the young men in the area out in Brooklyn Center, we believe that this woman was targeting and harassing and profiling young black men way before she killed Daunte Wright. And then, prior to that, she killed Kobe Heisler, or she was a part of what happened to Kobe Heisler. She actually told the officers on scene to turn off their body cameras after Kobe Heisler was shot. So she's been a part of multiple situations where this is just a repeat, just like Derek Chauvin repeatedly killed people before he got to George Floyd. We're dealing with the same thing with Kim Potter. It's just a female instead, but we're not gonna let her cry her little white privilege tears to get away with murder of a young black man who was unarmed. She was a 25-year-old veteran. She knew the difference between her gun and a taser. So we just want to continue to show solidarity with this family. We want to continue to show up for this family and all families that have lost their loved ones at the hands of this corrupted system. And so, any of the families, I always offer the floor to the families that have lost people first and foremost. So any of the families want to say a few words, and any of the people in our community who have been standing and fighting with all of our families, if you guys would like to say a few words this evening, we would appreciate it, because we're so grateful for everybody that showed up this evening. You could be anywhere doing anything. You could be hanging out with your families, but you choose to be out here with our families, and that will never go unnoticed. It will never go unappreciated what you guys sacrifice and how much you even bring your babies and your children out here. Even every last person that's out here, even the other families that have built strength enough to be out here. Let's continue to work together, and let's continue to love on each other. Let's continue to fight together. Let's not let them see us separated from one another. Let's let them see us standing in solidarity and shutting this shit down. If Daunte don't get it, 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 shut it down. Thank you. Any other families want to say a few words? We have the...
Again, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I see people moving around in the courtroom, so the judge still isn't back yet, so we're just going to stick with looking at this little bit from the protest last night that we weren't able to run at the time because court wasn't finished at the end of yesterday. So again, you can see them kind of moving around in the plexiglass. It should be back within 5 minutes or so. Thank you.
Mother of Jeffrey Smith, who was killed by St. Paul police, shot 49 to 52 times. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all your support. Thank you all for coming out. Love all of you. We want justice, and we want it now. We want justice for Daunte Wright. We want Kim Potter's convicted to the highest and the fullest. What gives you the right to take his life? We're tired. We're really tired of your cover-ups. We're tired of your BCA cover-ups. We're tired of your prosecutorial cover-ups. We're tired of your government cover-ups. We need justice. We're gonna get it by any means necessary. We don't care who don't like it. This is wrong. She was a trainer. What was she training? Training people how to kill? What is she training? We need to go. She has to go. Kim Potter, you have to go. You are gonna go, Kim Potter. It's totally sickening. What you did to Daunte Wright, you're not gonna get away with it. We're tired of your cover-ups. We're tired of all of this. Your trainings of other cops to kill, that's enough.
So we are back live in court. This is the live feed that we're receiving right now from the Hennepin County Government Center, coming into the afternoon of day 2 of jury selection in the Kim Potter trial. So it's been moving along pretty fast. They may have a gap day, basically. The judge was saying that there might be a day off before the 8th when opening arguments is scheduled. So they said they would do jury instructions that day, I think, outside of the public. So 8th would be next Wednesday, so opening arguments would be a week from today.
Yes.
You ready for us to get the next batch of jury?
In 1 second. Yes. I'm ready, Zach.
jurors that are seated, would those be the jurors that are the alternates?
Yeah, the last two.
Last two, okay, thanks. In Wisconsin, they still draw them out of a.
Yeah, I heard that.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of killings over there.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. I'm Regina Chu, and I'll be the presiding judge in this trial. Before we get started, I want to start out by thanking you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for interrupting your normal routine. Thank you for fulfilling such an important civic obligation. These are, of course, not normal times. These are extremely trying times. So it is with extra heartfelt appreciation from the entire judicial system that we say thank you for responding to your jury summonses. Upholding the rights we cherish, the right to a trial by jury and the right to a speedy trial, in unusual, trying times is the American way. You validate these constitutional rights by appearing today and by proving your willingness to serve. You jurors are our heroes. You are ordinary people who are called to do extraordinary work to make sure our justice system moves forward, even in the midst of a pandemic. You are upholding the Constitution, the very foundation of our democracy, and we could not do this without you. Not all of us can serve in the military, but what we all can do is do our civic duty by serving as jurors. Our justice system would not work without good citizens like you. I'm saying thank you again because I really can't say thank you enough. As you know, this is a criminal case in which the state of Minnesota has charged the defendant, Kimberly Potter, with the following counts. Count 1 is first-degree manslaughter predicated on reckless use or handling of a firearm, and that count alleges that on or about April 11, 2021, in Brooklyn Center, Hennepin County, Minnesota, defendant Kimberly Ann Potter caused the death of Daunte Wright while committing the misdemeanor offense of reckless handling or use of a firearm so as to endanger the safety of another with such force and violence that death or grave bodily harm to any person was reasonably foreseeable. Count 2 alleges second-degree manslaughter, and that count alleges that on or about April 11, 2021 in Brooklyn Center, Hennepin County, Minnesota, defendant Kimberly Ann Potter caused the death of Daunte Wright by her culpable negligence, whereby Kimberly Potter created an unreasonable risk and consciously took a chance of causing death or grave bodily harm to Daunte Wright while using or possessing a firearm. The defendant has pleaded not guilty. That plea denies the charges made against her and places upon the state of Minnesota the burden of proving her guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The state is represented by Mr. Matt Frank, Ms. Erin Eldridge, and Mr. Josh Larson. And other attorneys involved in the case are Attorney General Keith Ellison and Mr. Ra Shah. The defendant is represented by Mr. Earl Gray, Mr. Paul Eng, and Ms. Amanda Montgomery. And would the defendant please stand? Thank you. I have two clerks that are helping me through this trial, Ms. Jessica Bauer and my law clerk, Mr. Zach Kramer. And they're making sure that all administrative matters are taken care of. If any problems arise, if you're chosen as a juror or you need to get me a message, please let my staff know and they'll make sure the message gets to me. Seated in front of me is Ms. Carly Davis. She is a certified court reporter and she's responsible for keeping an accurate record of the proceedings. That means when you respond to questions, you need to speak loudly and clearly. And if you are asked a question, you have to answer orally with a yes or a no instead of shaking your head or saying uh-huh or uh-uh. Okay? Okay, before we get started here, let me say a couple of things about logistics. First of all, mask wearing. You must wear your mask at all times while you're in the courtroom and in the courthouse generally. The lawyers are also required to wear their masks unless they're at the podium asking you questions. You may remove your mask only when you're in the witness stand and being questioned individually. Let me give you a broad outline of what lawyers call voir dire, which is basically jury selection. I'll give you an idea of what we're going to be doing first. First of all, I'm going to start out with group questions. And if you have a positive response, I want you to raise your hand. Do not answer verbally at this point, okay? After the group questions are done, all of the jurors will be dismissed and we will do you one by one. So I'll start out on the individual questions by doing some follow-up questions on your answers to the questionnaire, and then the attorneys will each have an opportunity to ask questions of you if they have any. Okay, just a couple of points. We can't always control the temperature in the courtroom, so if you're seated as a juror, you will want to dress in layers so that you can put additional clothes on if it's too cold. Also, I want to warn you that there may be delays during the trial. I want to apologize in advance for any delays that might take place. I'm really cognizant of the time that you're taking out of your ordinary lives to serve as a juror, and therefore I try to deal with all legal matters before court starts and or deal with those matters after you leave for the day. But sometimes things come up that nobody anticipated. So I hope you will understand if there are delays. I would suggest that you bring something to read so that you're occupied should there be any delays, and obviously I'll try to keep those down as much as possible. Please understand that the attorneys and I will make every effort to keep the case proceeding, but there may be matters regarding questions of law that must be handled in chambers or when you're not here. And this is to make sure that only the proper evidence is submitted to you for your consideration in rendering your verdict. Okay, I'm going to give you some rules of law that apply in a criminal case at this point. A complaint is not evidence. It creates no inference or presumption of guilt. No member of the jury should in any way be prejudiced against the defendant because a complaint has been filed against her or because the defendant is on trial. The defendant is presumed innocent. In order for you to find the defendant guilty, the state must prove guilt. The defendant does not have to prove innocence. The presumption of innocence remains with the defendant unless and until the state has proven her guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by evidence admitted in this trial. A common misperception of the American criminal justice system is that the jury determines whether the defendant or the accused person is guilty or innocent. That is not what American juries do. There is no such thing as an innocent verdict under American criminal law. The jury's verdict is either guilty or not guilty. Guilty means proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Not guilty means not proved beyond a reasonable doubt. To ensure that both the state and the defendant receive a fair trial by an impartial jury, it'll be necessary for me and the attorneys to ask you questions. Remember that you will be under oath when you answer the questions and that you must answer truthfully. The questioning that will take place is a really important part of the process. That's because all of us hold personal opinions, and all of us have had things happen to us. The purpose of jury selection is to try to determine whether or not you hold certain opinions so strongly, or whether something has happened to someone near and dear to you that would make it impossible for you to be fair to both sides in this case, that would prevent you from listening to the evidence and making your decision solely on the evidence presented along with your common sense. Please don't take any offense to the questions that are going to be asked. The purpose is not to pry into your personal affairs. Our sole purpose and our obligation is to ensure that the jurors who decide this case are neutral, open-minded, and fair. Neutral means that before you hear all the evidence, you're not leaning one way or the other on the question of whether the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Open-minded means that you're willing to listen and consider all of the evidence, and fair means that you will base your verdict on the evidence in this case and not on anything that is not presented in this case. We want you to bring your common sense into the jury room, but your verdict must be based on the evidence you hear during the trial. Your obligation is to answer the questions and tell us of anything, even if you're not asked, that might affect your ability to be fair, open-minded, and neutral. Now, some of you who are questioned may be excused. Please don't take any offense to this. I hope you will understand if that happens. At this point, members of the panel, I'd like you to stand up and raise your right hand and face my law clerk while he administers the oath.
Do you affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror? If so, please say, I do.
Okay, please be seated. Okay, panel members, I'm going to start with the group questions. And again, just to remind you, don't answer orally, just raise your hand. Does anyone on this panel have any serious concerns for their health because of serving as a juror in this case? Please raise your hand. Okay, no hands were raised. Our system of law presumes the defendant innocent of the charges against her unless and until she has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof is on the state. the defendant does not have to prove her innocence, and she is presumed innocent. Do you accept the principle that the defendant is presumed innocent and that the state has a burden of proof? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Does anyone disagree with that principle? Please raise your hand. No hands are raised. If you serve as a juror, I will instruct you as to the law. You must follow the law as I give it to you, even if you believe the law is or should be different. Are you willing to do this? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. If you are chosen as a juror, I will instruct you that proof beyond a reasonable doubt is such proof as ordinarily prudent men and women would act upon in their most important affairs. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense. It does not mean beyond all possibility of doubt. Does anyone disagree with this principle of law? If so, please raise your hand. No hands are raised. In arriving at your verdict, if you sit as a juror, the subject of penalty or punishment is not to be discussed or considered by you. This is a matter that lies solely with the court and within the limits prescribed by law. The subject of penalty or punishment must not in any way affect your decision as to whether or not the state has proven the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Are you willing to follow this instruction? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Under our system of justice, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence produced in court and the law that the judge instructs, and not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. Would you be able to follow that principle of law? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Now, there will be police officers who will testify in this case, as well as other witnesses. I am going to give you some guidelines in determining whether a witness is believable or not believable. You know, it's basically a matter of common sense, but things to look at are: how did the witness appear? Did he or she seem honest and sincere? Will the witness gain or lose if the case is decided a certain way? Was the witness's testimony consistent with other evidence in the case? What is the witness's relationship to the parties? Would you be able to use these guidelines in deciding the credibility of a police officer just as you would any other witness? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Is there anyone here who would automatically believe the testimony of a police officer just because he or she is law enforcement? Please raise your hand. No hands are raised. Is there anyone here who would totally discount the testimony of a peace officer just because of his or her position? No hands are raised. All right, I've introduced to you the attorneys in this case and the defendant. Do any of you know the attorneys or the defendant? No hands are raised. Okay, earlier you were giving a list of possible witnesses. They may not all testify. What I'd like you to do is raise your hand if you know any of the witnesses on the list, and I'd like you to raise your hand even if you're not sure. Okay, no hands are raised. Okay, we expect to start opening statements by December 8th. We may start a little earlier, but that's our expectation at this point. And we further expect to be finished with everything by Christmas Eve. That's our best estimate. Don't be concerned if we do not finish by Christmas Eve. I intend to take Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve weekend off, no matter what, and we'll start December 27 if we are not done. So I don't worry about missing Christmas with your family and friends. If you're chosen as a juror, I'll just give you an idea of what the time will be. We'll normally start at 9 o'clock and conclude about 4:30 or 5. There'll be a 20-minute break in the morning, a 20-minute break in the afternoon, and we typically take a lunch break for an hour, about 12:30 to 1:30. Please remember that you must not talk to anyone involved in this case, nor should you discuss this case among yourselves. During the recess, you may see the attorneys or the parties in the hallways. Don't take offense if they don't stop and say hello or talk to you. Everyone involved in this case has been ordered to have no contact or communication with any member of the jury panel. Any violation of that order could jeopardize the trial, and this prohibition will continue until a verdict has been rendered. All right. At this point, we're going to start individual voir dire. So I'm going to ask that other than juror number 25, the other jurors may follow the deputy back to the courtroom waiting room. Okay, Ms. 25, can you come up here, please? And you can take the seat right next to me in the jury box or the witness box. And could you please remove your mask? How are you doing today? Okay. This shouldn't take long. A couple of follow-up questions. You said that you had a somewhat negative general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter. My question to you is, can you base your decision only on the testimony and the evidence in this case and set aside any prior general impressions that you have of the defendant?
Yes.
And as Ms. Potter sits here today, can you give her the presumption of innocence?
Yes.
Okay. In response to the question, do you believe our criminal justice system works? You said, I think sentencing and verdict should be unbiased and equal despite race or gender. I'm responsible for sentencing,
Right.
okay? Will you keep that out of the jury room? Any discussion about that if you're chosen as a juror?
Yes.
Okay. So you won't let that affect your decision as to whether or not you decide whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty?
Right.
Okay. It's encouraging to see that you're looking forward to having the experience of serving as a juror?
I feel like I've sort of reflected on it a little bit more since answering, and I didn't mean to sound naive in my answer previously. I think I've reflected and sort of taken in the weight of the trial a little bit and understand the importance of it. I don't think that I would like to be on the jury, but I will serve if I am asked.
Okay. So, if the parties chose you as a juror in the case, you would be willing to serve?
I would.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that we should know about you that wasn't on the questionnaire that you think might affect your ability to be fair and impartial to both sides?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. All right, now the lawyers have a chance to ask questions.
Good afternoon,
Hello.
Miss 25, that's your number.
Yes.
I'm Earl Gray, Pauline, and my client, our client, and Amanda Montgomery's back there. We're representing Ms. Potter. And I'm going to ask you some questions pertaining to the answers you made in your questionnaire. And that was a couple months ago, was it?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Do you have any memory of what you said in here?
Vaguely.
Okay. Starting out, you were asked what information you had from media reports, and you wrote a rather extensive statement. Was that based on what you read and that you saw the video?
Correct.
Okay, and how many times did you see the video?
2 or 3.
2 or 3? And you based your description of the incident on the video and what you read, correct?
Correct.
And in what you read, you write, Kimberly Potter fired her gun, shooting Daunte Wright. She alleged, and alleged is underlined, that she tried to fire her taser, but fired her gun by mistake. Why did you have alleged underlined?
I guess I just didn't want to say that was a fact. I know that that's what she alleged. I guess I was just trying to highlight the proper verbiage. I didn't want to say that she did or didn't.
And you saw the video a 3 times?
Yeah.
Did you hear the video, the yelling taser, taser?
I couldn't quite tell what she was saying. It sounded like taser.
I see. In this case, there's a presumption of innocence. And what that means is you must presume that Kim Potter is innocent of this charge. Can you do that?
Yes, I think so.
Well, it's a little bit different than reading the newspaper, watching a video. On that, you jump to the conclusion, well, they got her. She's had it. She's guilty. And that's not what you do in this courtroom. You do the direct opposite. You presume that she's innocent, and that isn't not guilty. That's innocent. Do you understand that you have to do that?
Yes.
And it's a very different thinking than you usually do?
Yes.
Okay. You also find that our client is your somewhat negative impression of her. Could you leave that somewhat negative impression outside the courtroom, and when you come in here, be objective and presume her innocent?
Yes, I think so.
Excuse me?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Well, you are the one that know about yourself, and you should be able to know if you can either presume her innocent and not have a somewhat negative attitude or not. I think so. Can you or can't you?
I can.
Okay, thank you. And I do not believe Daunte Wright should have been killed. I don't think she intended to kill him, but she should have realized that she drew her firearm. Can you take that outside the courtroom too and rely on just what you hear in here?
Yes.
Then you got somewhat negative on her, and you're going to presume her innocence. But then when we get to Mr. Wright, you're neutral on him. And you state, I've read stories that he's had several run-ins with the law before. I think the media's view on him is that he is a criminal, which might be true, but he was young and had time to change and get better. Was your attitude that way back then, as far as you were concerned about him?
Yes.
You read information in the newspaper, I suppose, or online, or wherever you read that material. And although it said that he was a criminal, you didn't care. He was young and he didn't deserve to be killed.
Correct. I think just because somebody commits a crime doesn't mean
Excuse me?
I just believe that just because somebody committed a crime doesn't mean that that they're a bad person.
Some of those beliefs, if you learn in this case that if somebody commits a crime, law enforcement may have the right to pursue that person or stop that person from committing the crime. Do you disagree with that?
No, I agree with that statement.
Okay. And on some occasions, as you experienced during your lifetime and read, people commit crimes and end up dead because of that. You understand that?
I understand that, yes.
And you don't agree with that, though?
I believe that everybody deserves a chance. Like I said, I don't think that committing a crime makes you a bad person. I think that, I guess I just believe that everybody deserves the opportunity to correct their actions.
Okay. In a situation of an emergency situation that a police officer faces, an exigent circumstance, and there's no time to think, do you understand what I'm talking about when I say that about police officers? I'm going to object to that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Sure. You do understand, based on your life experiences and your reading and everything, that police officers on occasion have very little time to think, and they're put in an emergency or an exigent circumstance.
Injection sustained.
Okay. And what you also say, and don't mean to put you on the spot, what we're attempting to do here is to get a fair and impartial jury for our client and for the state, actually.
Yes, I understand.
And I hope you understand that, because
I do.
there are two important decisions to be made by a juror. One is guilt or not guilty. Mm-hmm. But the other one is whether or not at this juncture you know enough about yourself to know whether you can be fair and impartial against the defendant and fair and impartial for the state, and not favor one side or the other when you get into this jury trial. You understand that?
I understand.
And are you able to be fair and impartial? Or do you
Yes.
have some beliefs that you express in this questionnaire that seem to indicate, for example, I don't think he should have been shot, no matter if he was guilty of a crime or not. Police should use non-lethal methods of force. And was that your opinion back then?
Yes, it still
And
is.
is that your opinion today?
It is.
And going back to the back of your questionnaire, actually, let's just go to the last page. You state, do you want to serve as a juror in this case? Yes. I've never served as a juror before, and it would be an experience I'd love to have. But then you say, I think the case is very important and relevant to the issues our community and country are facing. Well, do you realize if you sit on this jury, the issues our country is facing about riots and protests are not an issue in this case. This case is a criminal case, the state of Minnesota against my client, Kim Potter. The other stuff you have to leave outside the courtroom. And are you willing to do that? You really think you can do that?
I do. As I stated previously, I think that I've had time to reflect on my willingness to serve on the jury, and at this point I feel like I would rather not, simply because I do understand the weight that this trial holds and the importance of it, and I just frankly don't want to be in the middle of it.
Okay. Your Honor, may I talk with counsel? So do we have to put on the earphones, Judge?
So if folks are new to this process, they're having a sidebar where they communicate on these radios with the judge. It lets everybody kind of stand farther apart than the huddles that are traditionally used in court. And so they're on the radio with the judge right now. And obviously, the defense is going to try to get this juror removed. You heard defense attorney Earl Gray giving some kind of convoluted or complicated questions. I think this probably sort of try to trip up that juror because he was hoping he wouldn't have to spend a strike, basically. They've been having to spend strikes, and they only get so many strikes to select to take people off of juries. Also, it's not legal to generally to take people off of a jury purely by their race. And so that was something we saw come up in the Charlottesville trial was, a situation where the plaintiffs who were suing these white supremacists thought that the defendants were trying to just obviously try to keep black people off of that jury. That was one thing that happened in a pretty contentious jury selection process. So, it is pretty sensitive how this goes down, how the jury composition gets mapped out. It has been very striking by the way questions are presented, this new focus on so-called Blue Lives Matter, which is a slogan and not really an organization anywhere in particular. And so we have the jury questionnaire linked on our website. I don't have it pulled up right at the moment, but those are the questions that are being reviewed. So if you head to our website and you hit the Kim Potter trial link up at the top, and you go down a little ways on our landing page. So the juror questionnaire is right there. And there it is. So I'll go back.
25. I have a few more questions. Knowing what you know about yourself, do you feel that you would have a bias in this case in favor of Daunte Wright and people that have been shot and killed by the police?
I think that I might be leaning that way, yes.
Thank you. Same, Your Honor.
So again, while they're on the sidebar here for a minute, you can see on the juror questionnaire that there's a lot of questions. You know, what do you know from media reports? You know, what's your impression of the defendant, Daunte Wright? And I believe they ask, you know, about demonstrations. Have you been affected by demonstrations? Where do you get your news from? What podcasts do you listen to? Are you on Twitter? You know, have you had contact with police? What's your ratings of different things? So there's a lot of stuff in these various, you know, in these various questions. So all the jury had to fill in these questionnaires. Do you have firearms? You know, they've been asking a lot about tasers today. There's the question. Question 12 is about tasers. 13, 14, 15, 16 on tasers.
For coming today, and thank you for your honesty in answering questions. I'm going to excuse you from this jury. Okay? All right, thank you. Deputy, could you hold up 1 second before the next juror comes in? Okay, for the record, I granted the for cause request of the defendant. It was based on her answer to the last question. She admitted that she would lean toward the defendant, or toward Mr. Wright's position, and other young men that have been injured by police officers. So that motion was granted. Are you ready for the next juror? Okay.
So thanks for joining us this afternoon. So that juror was basically what they call struck for cause, which is where they just sort of, you know, don't have to spend any strikes. The defense didn't have to spend one of its strikes. And the judge said it was because of the last question
26.
where that person was like, yeah,
Please
I don't
take a
really
seat.
think I can be impartial.
And would you please remove your mask? All right, thank you for answering the questions on the questionnaire. Just a couple follow-up questions. Okay, you indicated in one of your answers that the place where you worked did suffer damage during one of the demonstrations. Okay. Now, my question is this. Were you working at the time when it happened?
Not at the place that was damaged.
Okay. But it was close to where you work, is that right? All right. And how did that make you feel?
Angry,
Okay.
upset.
Can you explain how you felt and why?
I was angry and upset because I felt that some of the actions were not necessarily related to why the protests were happening at the time. So particularly with a lot of the damage that occurred, I didn't necessarily equate the two with the protests that were happening and with the actions that were happening as well. So I felt that it wasn't connected and that the protests were being taken advantage of in that sense.
Okay, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that certain people involved in some of the property damage really didn't have racial justice issues in mind. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you're chosen as a juror in this case, can you put aside any anger about the demonstrations that occurred and just listen to the evidence and decide whether or not the state has proven its case against Ms. Potter based on the evidence alone and not on any concerns that there'll be further demonstrations?
I will do my best.
I think I need a more positive response to that. If I instruct you that you are to just base your decision solely on the evidence in this case and the law that I give it to you, would you follow that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. You indicated that you have a professional presentation that you have to do for Sunday, December 5. Okay, you'll be able to do that. Okay, just so you don't have any concern about that. We will not be in session on December 5. And good luck, by the way.
Thank you.
In response to the question, do you want to serve as a juror in this case, you responded no. Can you tell me why, and if you still feel that way?
I do still feel that way. I have a lot of friends and family that are very opinionated in the matter. I personally feel like I'm someone that could put my biases aside, but I do have a lot of those influences around me. And as much as it could matter, I have job interviews and I'm currently finishing up a degree, so I'll have finals coming up soon. This is from what I gathered at the time that I answered these questions, that the timing would not necessarily help my current career and my trajectory, and that it would actually hinder that, which is why I answered that question that way.
All right. When are your finals?
Over the next 2-3 weeks.
Okay. And will you be able to delay taking your finals?
I think there might be one that I might be able to delay because it's more of a project-based final, but the other two are in person. So I will need to be there for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
When are the in-person interviews?
In 2 weeks. Oh, in the interviews.
Well, where you have to be there in person. When are those scheduled?
In
for?
2 weeks.
Okay. And are you able to reschedule those, or the one interview?
I could do my best.
Okay. Is there anything right now that makes you think that they would not reschedule that?
Nothing that I know of right now.
Okay. You indicated that this is a very public trial and that you're a private person. And is that one of your concerns?
Yes, that
Okay.
certainly is.
If the parties chose you as a juror, would you be willing to serve?
Yes, I believe it's a civic duty as a citizen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, counsel?
Good afternoon. Number 26. You have a number, not a name. Since you've completed this interview, written questionnaire a couple of months ago, is there anything that has changed in this, or is this about the same as it was back then?
That is about the same as it was back
Okay.
then.
And is there anything else we should know about that wasn't covered in the questionnaire in our selection of you as a juror or non-juror?
No, not to my knowledge.
And basically, you say in here that you will follow the law as the judge gives it,
That is correct.
and listen to the evidence and look at the exhibits and come to a conclusion at the end of the case, correct?
That is correct.
And I take it you're the type of person to wait till you hear all of the evidence, including our evidence, before you come to any conclusion, since you are the job you do have.
That is correct.
Okay. And can you think of any reason why you would not be fair and impartial in this case?
Not at this time.
I realize you have some people that might know about this that are your relatives. Can you handle that if some of them are very opinionated one way or the other?
Yes, I certainly can.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Pastor Cross,
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Good afternoon, number 26. Sorry, that's rather impersonal, but just the way we're doing it in this case, so sorry about that. I can come third after you've already been asked a lot of questions, so I probably won't have many to ask you about either. And I'm just going to try to follow up on a couple of things. Sounds like any contact that you have with law enforcement is more in passing at work, essentially.
Correct.
Don't go on ride-alongs or anything of that nature. You
No.
just see him in the building. And you, when you were asked about your impression of Ms. Potter, you indicated that she realized she fired her firearm instead of her taser immediately and turned herself in. Where did you get that information from? Do you recall?
So everything I know about this case has been what was covered in the media.
And was that some time ago or recently?
This was, I believe, right after this had happened, and details about what had happened were starting to come out in the media.
So quite a long time ago, actually, right?
Yes.
And just seeing it on the media, you didn't go out and track it down and read everything you could on it?
Not on this particular case, no.
And so that impression that you have at the time is not something you're so committed to now you couldn't set it aside.
Correct.
You realize that's not evidence, right?
Correct.
And as a juror, the decision you make, as the judge said, is to decide it based only on the evidence in court.
Correct.
You think, you've probably said this probably 3 times now, but you feel you can do that for sure.
Yes, I believe so.
You were asked in the questions about the organizations Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. And were you familiar with both of those organizations?
Yes.
And you wrote the same answer for your opinions of both or impressions of both. Do you recall doing that?
I vaguely remember doing that, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you essentially wrote Black Lives Matter as a way for members to voice their opinions, and then essentially the same thing about Blue Lives Matter. Can you just explain for us a little bit why you answered it that way?
So I answered it in that way because I believe that everybody is entitled to their opinions and what they believe in. And that really isn't different no matter what you call the movement.
So you see those organizations as a way for those members that want to be a part of them can have a voice to the community.
Correct, just like any other organization.
And you have a brother in the Marine Corps?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you see him very much, or is he
Intermittently.
yeah, he's actively deployed? I don't know what the proper terminology would be, but
He is not currently, but he was before.
are you close with him?
Yes.
Talk to him a lot about being a Marine?
Less about our jobs and more about our personal lives.
So it's not a big aspect of your relationship with your brother. It's not a strong connection you have. It's just his job and your job.
Correct.
I think you candidly admitted to us, we always appreciate in these questionnaires that you're a private person. We certainly respect that. And one of the things a juror has to do, well, it's kind of an odd job, because in one sense you make a personal decision, right? You consider the evidence and evaluate that evidence for yourself. But then you also have to go in a room and discuss that, deliberate. That's why we call it deliberations with others. Think you'd have any trouble being a part of a process like that with others?
No, I would not.
If you had opinions about evidence, you're willing to share those with others and consider what they say as well.
Yes, I can certainly do that.
An important part of jury service, isn't it? And the friends and family that have strong opinions around you, you indicated you would have no trouble. You could handle that. Of course, if you're a juror, you can't talk about the case at all while it's going on. And no trouble following that.
Correct.
And do you have any concern about whatever decision you make in the case, the jury makes in the case, how that might affect you and those relationships later? Do you have any concerns about that?
Some concern.
Yeah.
I can't absolutely say that there's no concern.
Yeah. Would you still be able to fairly decide the case?
I believe so.
Decide the case and then deal with those issues later.
Everybody has their opinions.
Okay. Can you excuse me just for a moment, please?
Yep.
Here, excuse me, please. Thank you, Juror 26. I have no further questions, Your Honor. We would pass the juror.
Pass the case.
Yes.
Okay. You will be a juror in this case, okay? And we expect to start on December 8th. We may start earlier, but right now it's December 8th. You will be getting a call from the jury office telling you when to report and what time and where, all right? In the meantime, have a good day and a good evening, all right? And thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, juror number 28. Good afternoon. Please be seated, and could you remove your mask, please? Thank you. All right, I don't have very many questions for you, okay? You did say that you would find it moderately difficult to look at graphic photographs, including photos and videos of a person who's died. If you're chosen as a juror, would you do it even though you would find it difficult?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to serve as a juror on this case?
I would fill out my duty.
Okay. You indicated on your questionnaire that you weren't sure, but you would serve if the parties chose you.
Yes.
Okay. And I realize it's a commitment and that it takes you away from your family and your personal life. So thank you for your willingness to serve. Go ahead, counsel.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul A. I'm one of the lawyers for Officer Potter, Earl Gray, Amanda Montgomery. I have an opportunity to ask you some questions. That's how the process works. Okay. You filled out the questionnaire, and we appreciate that, and I've read it. And I had a couple questions about it for you. And the first question appears on page 3. It asks you what you remember about this, and you said, I quote, so I can refresh your memory here, Daunte Wright was fatally shot by Kim Potter during a traffic stop. Question as confusion if a taser was grabbed versus a gun. That's not, I think I've got it right, but I'm close.
Yes, that sounds right.
And how did you come to that conclusion upon what you saw?
Just media coverage.
And what kind of media coverage did you see?
Oh, a long time ago, I don't recall, but it was just whatever was on maybe Fox News or whatever might have been playing. I don't recall the specific source of the media.
Okay. And you have neutral opinions of both Officer Potter and Daunte Wright at this point, isn't that correct?
Yes.
So, and you're not making any judgments one way or another?
No.
You realize, of course, that Officer Potter is presumed innocent.
Correct.
And she will be testifying at the trial, and if you are chosen, we would want you to wait to hear from her before you make any decisions. You're, I think, willing to do that, but you got to tell me one or another.
Yes.
Okay. So you're willing to wait it out and hear everything?
Yes.
So we've got her testimony and some other testimony coming.
Yes.
Fair enough? Okay. And you've also talked about Daunte Wright's death with your family and friends, according to this?
Yes.
It's, you indicate that it was most unfortunate.
Yes.
Which it is, of course.
I'm sorry.
And you still, of course, feel that way, but any early death is most unfortunate.
Yes.
Okay. And no one's disputing that.
I'm sorry.
No one is disputing that.
Yes.
Okay. And you also feel that the community was negatively impacted by the demonstrations and the riots because of the personal property damage. Is that right?
Correct.
And you still feel that way?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You also suffered, you were a victim of a crime. A car was broken into. Is it your car?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And you were somewhat satisfied with the police. Did they solve the crime?
Yes.
Okay. They found the person?
Yes.
Were you pleased or at least satisfied with how that case was resolved?
Please.
Was that person charged, if you remember?
I believe so.
Okay. Then you were asked a series of questions in 7, and you strongly agreed with the idea the police in my community make me feel safe, correct?
Yes.
And you would oppose defunding the police.
Yes.
Okay. And then you have some neutral, no opinions about a lot of the questions too. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the one thing you're concerned about, or not one thing, but you're uncomfortable with photographs and seeing photographs from the case. Did I hear you right?
I would say moderate, right?
Moderately concerned?
Yeah, not impairing.
Okay. So I think I may have missed that exchange with Judge Chu. So there are always photographs in a case like this. We'll try to minimize them for you, but the fact that there are some photographs, you can survive that.
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell me what your master's degree is in?
Business.
Okay. Where was it from?
Madison.
Okay. Are you from Wisconsin?
No.
And can you tell me what a procurement officer does? I have a hunch I know, but I want you to explain it for me.
I'm responsible for kind of the strategic contractual arrangements between our company and our suppliers, and also procuring that material for manufacturing.
So you're a busy guy right now, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You're experiencing the same supply problems that most people are.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your questionnaire is quite short, so I'm almost at the end here. The last question is that, do you want to serve as a juror? I mean, it's a weighty responsibility, you would agree. And you said you weren't sure, but you're willing to do it.
I'm willing to do it.
And you're qualified to do it, and you'll be fair.
Yes.
And you'll call it as you see it, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yes.
Okay. Just a second. Thanks for answering my questions. We pass this juror.
Counsel? Mr. Trump?
Good afternoon, Juror 28. I apologize for just using a number, but that's how we're running the system here. So Mr. Eng helped me out there by asking what a chief procurement officer does. I thought I had that similar sense of what it was, but and I didn't even think about at the time all these supply chain issues we keep hearing about, if that's even the right term. So it does make me wonder just how busy are you? And let me back up, because I think what the judge said earlier is, we're not here to pry into your personal life, and I apologize for that, but these are just kind of things that we have to know. We know this is going to be a lengthy trial, as trials go. Could go right up to Christmas Eve, or as the judge mentioned, maybe even after. And so we have to ask you, because you're the only one that can tell us, how busy are you? How is this going to affect your life, your work life?
I would say, I hate to sound selfish, but I would say extraordinarily busy right now. Challenging times, obviously, for all of us as we're heading into the seasons, but it's life, right? So we have to balance those things.
Yeah, and that's what I meant, like only you can tell us. It's not being selfish, right? It's being appropriate with us, and because we have to ask. The two concerns are, that you're going to miss work at a time that you just can't afford it financially or just work-wise, right? And when you sit, here as a juror, you got to be able to pay attention rather than being worried about work or having to go in at night. Would you have to do anything like that where you'd go in at night and catch up?
If I'm allowed to, I'll certainly need to work at night to catch up.
Yeah, we won't, well, I shouldn't speak for the judge, but typically, when we're done with court at the end of the day, you're free to go. But I mean, that does raise the question, if you're going to be going to work at night to catch up, how much sleep are you going to get and be sharp in the morning? You know what I mean?
Not to the point of deprivation, for sure. I'm certainly not going to put my personal health at risk, though.
Is it going to cause you personal stress at all to be having to swing double duty during that time?
Certainly, to some degree, yes.
And I don't want you to tell me the name of your business, but it sounds like manufacturing.
Yes.
And so is the time of year, this end of the year holidays, make your company busier?
I would say steady state at this time of year.
So it's really just the supply chain issues?
Yes, sir.
The cargo ship sitting out in the bay, right? So, I guess I'm trying not to repeat myself, but I just want to know, for you, do you think you can give us that kind of commitment to be here day in and day out for 2-3 weeks and be able to pay attention? You're the only one.
Answer.
You can go ahead and ask the question.
So, given everything we've discussed, do you think you can make that kind of commitment, or is this just not the right case for you?
I can make that commitment. I'll strive that balance.
Okay. You indicate in your questionnaire, in the answer you gave, there was a sensitive time for all in Minneapolis. Do you remember writing that?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
I'm sorry?
What did you mean by that?
That is a sensitive time?
Yeah.
These are just trying times for all of us, I think, both with COVID and just the challenges that we've had in the Twin Cities over the last year.
Okay. And you're referring to the challenges from the demonstrations and the protests, that kind of stuff, do you mean?
In a broader context as well. I just think that COVID has also been challenging for everybody.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think anybody will dispute that, right? COVID has been tough, right? Continues to be tough. We're talking through, 2 layers of plexiglass. And there's a question a few more down that deals with, how the demonstrations have affected the community, and you pointed out the damage to personal property and the harm to people. Is that the most striking thing that you recall, or that you think is the impact from those?
Those are the things that stood out, I think, for me personally, yes.
Think there's anything positive that came out of those?
I think there's something positive that comes out of every situation.
Okay. What kind of, can you think of anything with regard to the demonstrations that it would be positive to come out of?
I think folks having an opportunity to have a voice and a voice being heard is always a positive thing.
And of course there were similar things involved after this death occurred. Do you recall hearing about that?
A little bit, to be honest. I started to tune out a little bit of some of the noise in the media. A little bit bipolar, so sometimes it was hard to form a clear opinion about what was going on.
Okay. And again, not trying to pry, but just the way you said that it makes me want to ask you, why tune out? Right?
I just try to be open-minded about trying to understand where the truth of a situation is. And sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes our media has a tendency to be very bipolar in its opinions about things.
And you've sort of been asked about this already too, I think, and you understand that what you hear in the media is not evidence of a crime.
Correct.
Well, that's not the right way to say that. It's not evidence here in the courtroom, right? And as a juror, you can only go on what you hear here in the courtroom.
Correct.
And so, kind of knowing about the demonstrations and the negative things about it, do you think you can set that aside?
Yes.
In those questions, Mr. Eng kind of quickly led you through. You said people in my community, I'm sorry, let me start over. Police in my community make me feel safe. And you said you strongly agree with that. Why did you choose strongly agree?
Because that's the way I feel. I feel like they're there and they provide a purpose and they provide safety.
Okay. And the next statement is I support defunding the police, and you said I strongly disagree.
Correct.
So it's sort of, two sides of the same thing, right? That you want the police there, you feel strongly about having them to make you feel safe.
Correct.
And then you also strongly disagree with the statement, I do not trust the police.
Correct.
So you have a lot of trust in them and you want them there for you, correct?
Correct.
And it's partly to sort of deal with some of the negative stuff that came out of the demonstrations, the property damage and the harm to people, right?
Partly.
Yeah. And with many of those other questions, you chose no opinion. Do you remember why? You know, the questions about how police deal with people, you said you had no opinion about that. Do you remember why?
I didn't have a strong opinion one way or another on those questions.
Okay. I mean, do you think that, discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be, and you put no opinion?
Kind of to my prior point about being a little careful about what I believe in the media.
Okay. So that was aimed more at the media as a reliable source of information, maybe?
I think it's a source of information is not the only source of information.
You indicate there's a statement about police treating black and white people similarly, and you said no opinion on that. You remember why you took no opinion, or selected the no opinion option there?
I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that they treat them differently than they would anybody else.
One of the good things, of course, about the demonstrations was giving voice to that, and kind of part of what Black Lives Matter is trying to give voice to, right? Do you think that at all is I don't know how to say this, that it's just something you haven't seen personally, so you can't offer an opinion on it, or?
I've seen it personally. I'm not sure that it changes an opinion one way or another. I still feel neutral about the police protecting people equally.
Okay. And that means all people?
I'm sorry?
That means protecting all people equally?
Correct.
And some people say the Black Lives Matter movement is about equality, right? That Black Lives Matter too. And do you understand that that's sort of what part of their message is?
Yes.
Okay. And you think that's a valid point?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so when it came to evaluating evidence in a courtroom, black, white, doesn't matter.
Correct.
When you, I know you have, you were asked a question, one of the statements in that is about people today do not give our law enforcement officers the respect they deserve. And you chose no opinion for that too. Do you recall why?
Yes.
Why is that?
I know that I had a strong opinion one way or another on that statement.
Okay. Do you think you give them the respect they deserve?
I would hope so.
What does that mean to you when you say that you give them the respect they deserve? What does that mean?
That I respect the position that they hold. I try to support them in a position that they hold. I respect their opinion. I try to honor their request if they're asked something of me.
Are they capable of doing things wrong?
Sure, they're humans.
And as a juror, would you be able to judge the actions of a police officer in a courtroom just like anybody else's?
Yes.
Kind of, tying back to that notion of strongly disagreeing with the statement, I do not trust the police. So we've got that double negative there, but essentially you trust the police, right?
Correct.
And yet do you think you can, despite having that trust in them, evaluate a police officer's actions in a courtroom just like anybody else?
Yes.
An argumentative, asked and answered at this point.
Well, I'll let you answer. Go ahead. I think you answered already.
Yeah.
I did, sorry.
Okay. You can move on, Mr. Wright.
You indicate you have, sounds like you're a hunter.
Yes.
And So you have hunting rifles, shotguns, I assume.
Correct.
And have you ever taken, safety classes for that purpose?
It's required by law in some states to hunt.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have asked you that way. So he was like, no, I never did that. But you've done that?
Yes.
How long have you been a hunter?
Over 40 years, probably.
So lifetime thing.
Yes.
Do it with your family before?
Yes.
And pretty important to you?
Yes.
Can you excuse me just for a second? I want to, Your Honor, may I have a moment, please?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Juror 28. Your Honor, we would exercise a peremptory.
All right. Thank you so much, but you're excused from this jury panel. So you're done with jury service, but I really appreciate you showing up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Counsel, we're going to take our afternoon break, okay? Yes. I think I only suggested that you look at it. She must have had her baby by now. She had indicated number 30 was vomiting and very pregnant at the time she responded to her questionnaire, but she's probably not in that state right now.
We're gonna get justice, and we're gonna see to it. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now we'll just have a few here. We'll have like 3 here, and then we'll get going on the march because we don't want to lose people, and we got the streets blocked off and stuff. So we're gonna have Courtney Ross, the significant other of George Floyd. Thank you.
Oh, thank y'all again for coming out tonight. I'm quickly going to thank you. When I could not get out of bed and I could not take one step, I knew everyone was out here marching for Floyd, and I will never give enough thanks for that. It will be forever, so thank you. Daunte Wright was a student of mine at Edison High School. I worked with him every single day. One of the last times I saw Daunte, my arms were around him, and I didn't know that that would be the moment that I'd have to remember. I also am a mother. I have 2 sons. One of my sons is 21 years old. He's light complected, comes from a biracial family. He's athletic. He also loves basketball. And he goes around the north side in Brooklyn Center as much as Daunte did. Daunte is all of our sons. We need to remember that when this happens. Daunte is my son. Daunte is your son. Lord knows he's the right son. He is. I want to say about Kim Potter, like Tashira said, she's been profiling black people in Brooklyn Center for a long time now. And she took advantage of her position and murdered Daunte. Everyone that was trained under her, and as I've heard, her husband, who does taser training, should be retrained. Make sure that this never happens again. Yes. Rest in peace, Daunte. Love you.
Black lives. Black lives. Black lives. I have the co-founder of BLM Minnesota, Monique Kohler's Dottie, and the aunt of Marcus Golden come up and say a few words.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being out here. It's so important that we continue to stand up for justice, and we have to make sure that Daunte is not forgotten, right? So we have to continue to be out here. We cannot let up. It's just how we do it here in the Twin Cities, which is why I love you all in the community who comes out to support families. So on this day, standing in solidarity with the family, I offer my prayers and my love and all the solidarity in the world, whatever we can do. We've been doing work for Daunte. Many people have been out. So thank you all for being out here. And we just want to remember, Daunte's gotten so much further than the majority of families across the country in terms of the possibility of getting justice. And we haven't seen it here very often, right? We saw it with just George Floyd and then even Justine DeMond, which some may say that was not even justice because of the charges. But I'm just so proud that that video was released. I'm so happy for the family that they had that bit of evidence because so many weren't filmed, right? Tucson Psych Public Media had an event for those who weren't filmed. How many weren't filmed? So although it seems like it's such a hard day and a horrible day for the family, I'm sure it is. But I want you to know that it's also a blessing because so many of us didn't get a chance to sit in a courtroom, right? So out of everything negative, we can take something positive. So we want to look at this at least as a positive thing, that this killer cop, Kim Potter, is going to prison, and that's where she needs to be. There's no excuse for what she did. Her pulling a taser, pulling a gun and yelling taser is no different than many times we see black men, women, and children who are killed, and they yell, "Oh, put down the knife." There's no knife, right? They're just setting the stage. He's got a gun. There's no gun, but they're just setting the stage, right? So what Kim thought she was doing, she thought she was setting the stage. She's yelling, "Taser, taser, taser," knowing she had a gun. Knowing she had a gun. Also, we know what she could have done. She could have just let him go. They knew who he was. They knew his address. He was not an international flight risk, right? There was no need. Additionally, she put other people in harm's way by killing him while he is driving a vehicle. And it's ridiculous. Kim Potter is a killer cop, and she needs to be imprisoned for a long time. No justice, no peace. No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No killer!
Police!
No killer!
Police!
That's right. Thank y'all for being out here. Love and solidarity to you all.
Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! All right, we have one more speaker.
Hey there, folks.
Hey everyone, I hope you can hear me. Let me put my headphones in actually quick if I can find them.
Cool, yeah. So we've got Alex here to tell us about the latest with the Supreme Court. So Alex, thanks for tuning in. We're hearing you okay, so you can just go right ahead. And we have about 10 or so minutes before court comes back. So we wanted to hear about, you were tracking the Supreme Court and you had a piece earlier about abortion rights. So just, let us know what's up.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you can't hear the echo of me or anything. But yeah, so my name's Alex Binder. I'm part of the Unicorn Riot Media Collective, and I'm here to do a report back on another critical hearing that happened this morning, in addition to the Kim Potter trial you all have been watching from our stream. In Washington, D.C., the Supreme Court heard oral arguments as to whether all pre-viability prohibitions on abortion are unconstitutional. It's a very critical hearing. Currently in the U.S., per federal law under Roe v. Wade, which was a Supreme Court ruling in 1973, women and people who can become pregnant have the right to determine whether or not to bear children under the Due Process Clause protecting their right to personal privacy. And the Due Process Clause is part of the 14th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. And this hearing this morning happened because the state of Mississippi has been trying to pass a 15-week ban and more recently a 6-week ban on abortion. And after both were challenged and ultimately shot down by the Fifth Circuit of Appeals, the Fifth Circuit of Appeals, the state requested the Supreme Court review the initial lawsuit filed against it for their 15-week ban by the Center for Reproductive Rights and their colleagues. So this is mostly, this hearing this morning is mostly stemming from that. However, what it will affect is much greater than just Mississippi. This is federal law. This is concerning Roe versus Wade, which makes it makes it legal for abortion up until viability of a fetus. And viability means the ability for a fetus to live outside of the womb, so outside of another human body. The hearing went over a bunch of different things, and I'm just going to try to focus on that because, of course, Mississippi is not nearly the only state to attempt to impose highly restrictive abortion bans. And again, mind you, whatever outcome this hearing has could change current and future laws concerning the right to reproductive health and the ability of women and people who can become pregnant to have equal opportunities in society. And that was brought up during this hearing by the respondents. So like by the people who are pro Roe v. Wade, there was Julie Rickleman, I believe that's how you say your name, and General Elizabeth Prelogar. They were both stating arguments to protect Roe v. Wade. And some things they brought up were that fact of when, someone has a child, employment becomes difficult. It's time consuming. It's expensive. So those were things that were brought up. To get into some of the nitty gritty, specifically about the petitioner. So from Mississippi, the Solicitor General, who is Scott Stewart, excuse me, he spoke a lot about the millions of, quote, unborn children, end quote, who have died. He also mentioned how, quote, an unborn life being poked and then recoiling in the way one of us would recoil, end quote, as an example of a fetus being responsive, but he never actually cited specific data or evidence. The court just recently published the transcript, so I have some quotes that I'm going to read. Justice Sotomayor asked, like, what are specific advancements in medicine? And this is an exact quote from Mr. Stewart. I think it's an advancement in knowledge and concern about such things as fetal pain, what we know the child is doing and looks like and is fully human from a very early age. Justice Sotomayor responded, quote, "You know, in regular cases, courts decide whether science fits the Dober standard." And the Dober standard is this isn't a quote, this is what I'm saying. But the Dober standard, for clarity, is the set of criteria used to determine the admissibility of expert witness testimony in federal court. So she was saying, back to the quote, courts decide whether science fits the Dober standard. Obviously, under the Dober standard, the minority of people, a gross minority of doctors, who believe fetal pain exists before 24 or 25 weeks, it's a huge minority and one not well-founded in science at all. I don't see how that really adds anything to the discussion. So that's just some snippets of it. There was a lot. It went past the 90 minutes that it was allotted. It started at 10 a.m. Eastern. I believe it ended 2 hours later. So there was a lot of back and forth. I don't know how much more time we have, but I could add a little bit more. So, what, Dan?
Well, it seems like we have time for now. I'd say just keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. Yeah, so some other things that were highlighted was there's kind of a discrepancy, and it can be confusing about question of viability and what is even legal now, because it's not stated super specifically, even in Roe v. Wade. And then in the Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey Supreme Court ruling that happened in 1992, which reaffirmed Roe v. Wade, that also doesn't have super specific, doesn't say like exactly on this week is when it's illegal. So they went over that a lot in the hearing, like pretty back and forth. Some justices asked the respondents, so the pro Roe v. Wade side, whether a 15-week cutoff, like what's wrong with that? Asking why wouldn't that be enough time? And then there's like in Roe v. Wade, it states that someone can have an abortion up until viability, and what it states in Roe v. Wade is, sorry, let me find the quote. I wrote a bunch of notes. Is that viability is usually placed at about 7 months or 28 weeks, but may occur even earlier, even at 24 weeks. And so that 24 weeks is what many states have as a set of you can have an illegal abortion up until 24 weeks. And so that's usually what has been used. So the respondent side, the pro Roe v. Wade side, kept pushing for that 24 weeks rather than the 15 that was in the lawsuit, and rather than just repealing it, which the petitioner side was also advocating for. Another point that the let me see, sorry. Something that Justice Thomas kept asking asking the petitioner was like the exact part of the Constitution that they were hoping to continue to protect. So a quote from him is, "Back to my original question, if I were, I know your interest here is in abortion, I understand that, but if I were to ask you what constitutional right protects the right to abortion, is it privacy? Is it autonomy? What would it be?" And he continued to ask similar questions like that, trying to get at what exactly, where in the Constitution exactly makes abortion legal. And that's something the petitioner, the state of Mississippi, was also trying to point out. However, the petitioner side, or excuse me, the respondent side, here's a quote from them. "It's liberty, Your Honor. It's the textual protection in the 14th Amendment that a state can't deprive a person of liberty without due process of law. And the court has interpreted liberty to include the right to make family decisions and the right to physical autonomy, including the right to end a pre-viability pregnancy." So in this, to kind of wrap it up a bit, this hearing, like depending on the decision, the hearing itself was getting at the root of where the idea in the Constitution, in the US Constitution, where the idea of protection of abortion exists, and also was kind of going over the viability of that, of, you know, what pre-viability even means, because the question that the Supreme Court was hearing today was whether all pre-viability prohibitions on abortion are unconstitutional. So depending on what comes out from this, they didn't say at the end of the oral arguments when they would have a decision. They just ended it when the arguments were done. But what, you know, could come out of it is either this viability line they kept mentioning could be taken out potentially of Roe v. Wade and the Casey decision, which, according to the respondent, would essentially be just repealing Roe v. Wade, because that's a big portion of it. You know, whether the fetus is viable or not, you know, is when the legality of it is, you know, called into play. And another main thing the petitioner, Mr. Stewart, was saying was he and the state of Mississippi believe that it should be up to the people to create the decision. So the state, is what he was saying, the state to compromise within each other and create laws and rules on abortion, rather than have it be up to the federal government to, you know, make this law to protect, you know, the right of due process. And yeah, that's, I think, where I'll leave it now. There's a lot more. I'll most likely be writing something about it, so you can learn more about it at a later time. If anyone wants to learn more about reproductive rights in the United States specifically, you can go to our website, unicornriot.ninja. I wrote an article called "Abortion is Sacred, the Past and Present of Reproductive Rights," October 14th. So you can check that article out to learn more about this issue. Again, this was and is a critical hearing. So when the Supreme Court gets back about the ruling, we'll definitely let you all know what it is. So,
Well, Thank you so much for kind of filling us in on that. There's always, as we're learning with these court cases, there's a lot of different complicated factors in it all, and it's not always easy to interpret the oral arguments. I've never quite understood how to figure out where oral arguments are going with the Supreme Court, but thank you very much for helping figure this out. So that story, I'll just pop it up on the screen again. Was from October 14th. So if you're on our front page and you page down to the paginator, you can just go back one page. It's not too far back in the website. And it actually is a really nice, it goes through a lot of different things in the history. It's not like a short piece. It's a sort of a deep dive. So it's very helpful to kind of get up to speed because this policy area has been changing quickly. It seems like court's not still back. So as we're wrapping up here, this break is going kind of long. Is there any other stuff you wanted to add or things to keep an eye on? Like, is it all just the Supreme Court that's the only thing that matters, or is there, circuit courts or legislatures, or where are maybe some other spots people can watch for this related issues?
So this one in particular, nothing will happen with the Mississippi laws until this hearing is decided, or until the ruling by the Supreme Court. However, the 6-week abortion ban in Texas is still a thing. People in Texas cannot legally have abortions if you're 6 weeks pregnant or more. And that's a time when a lot of people are just finding out they're pregnant. So, and that's being fought also. I'd have to bring up the most recent hearings on that, but the Supreme Court actually ruled against injunctions 2 times, at least, that I know of. And so that means that the Supreme Court could have stopped that law from going into effect 2 times, and they did not. There's also, sorry, give me a second. Sure. Unfortunately, even though there's this federal law, right? Roe v. Wade is federal law. There are more than half the states in the United States are either, are filing laws, introducing legislation to limit access to reproductive rights, limit access to abortion. There are also, many limits in place all over the country as far as abortion care providers having to have a specific agreement with a hospital in order to maintain their status as a provider, as a medical provider. There's a specific name for those types of laws that I'm forgetting. But basically, there are a lot of restrictions and limits in place for abortion providers as is. So anything more, is just making their job to provide reproductive health services. It just keeps limiting it. So I think that's really, what the importance of this ruling will be. Because, even if, people don't think this, affects you because you might not have a uterus, at least 50% of the country, is in that position. So, if someone is to make that decision, it's not an easy one, and a lot of people do have to make it. 1 in 4 people who can become pregnant have abortions. So that's a very, large amount of people. So it affects a lot of people. It's a really important hearing, and so hopefully we'll hear back soon too on it, because the ruling could, if it reaffirms Roe v. Wade, then any further legislation in lawsuits against like the 6-week ban in Texas, and there's other 6-week bans popping up. There's one in Florida that was introduced. There's one in Ohio that was introduced. So, and in other places. So any future legislation could be, if Roe v. Wade is upheld, then there's a better chance for, reproductive rights to continue, and for the 6-week bans to potentially, not go through and not be law. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I think we'll go back to the showing the protests from last night, because they should be back to court in a couple minutes here. But I really appreciate sort of breaking that down, since there's so many different levels to that, and the state venue, the federal venues, the court chain, the legislatures. It's really happening in a lot of different places and levels of government. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Alex. Just hang on one second and we'll close it out. I appreciate it.
When we get started, she's going to link some of this. Daunte Wright's family?
Yes. Are we ready here? Okay. It's good to see so many people out here today. I'm old enough to be the great-grandmother of some of you out here today. And this struggle has been going on for a long time. I remember the Black Panthers and other folks who were out fighting this fight way back in the 60s, and even before that we had people who were dealing with police brutality. The thing that strikes me is that this is really a systems issue. Color of the oppressor doesn't matter. Gender of the oppressor doesn't matter. And so it's good that we have a multiracial fight back against this. And let's all keep organizing and hoping that Kim Potter gets justice from the system and ends up getting the maximum sentence that she can possibly get for this murder. Daunte is a grandson of my niece and her husband, and that's how I happen to be related to him. And it's important that, to me, that so many people of you and all of us are out here supporting the family and other victims of police brutality. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, I just wanted to mention a few other families that came out to stand in solidarity before we take off on the march. We have, so you heard from Monique Coyote. We also have the mother of Hardell Sherrill, Delshia Perry, who is out here. We have the grandfather of Brian Quinones that is out here with us today. We have Daunte Wright family and Phil Quinn and Billy Hugh family out here this evening. And we have, I was told that Kim Handy Jones, the mother of Cordell Handy, is out here with us this evening. And then we have myself for Justin Tigan that is standing in solidarity. So we have a number of families, and we have so many other families that just, they couldn't be out here tonight, but they stand in solidarity with Daunte Wright's family. And so we're going to take off on the march at this point, so we won't lose our crowd, and then we will stop mid-march and we'll have a few more speakers and we'll get going like that. Treyhorn, do you want to start leading us with some chants so we can get going on the march? Thank you all.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in. We're still waiting on court to come back. It's been a minute. Not sure what the issue is around here. So just give us a second here. I'm gonna run one of the stories that we did looking at police surveillance. This footage was obtained by one of our contributors, Sam Richards. So just we'll take a look at this. We'll kind of bounce to a few other things because it seems like it's been a minute. And thanks, Alex, for tuning in. I had a little technical trouble here just as we were hopping off, but I really appreciate getting the latest on court from Alex. So this story was from earlier this year. It's about these advanced infrared spy plane technology, the advanced surveillance that's directed against social movements in the Twin Cities. And so this video was our contributor Sam Richards got this video out of the government. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. So these are some photos from some of the, protest actions earlier in the spring out in Brooklyn Center after Daunte Wright was killed by Kim Potter. So we're gonna be running a video which is disturbing from last night. So I wanna just, warn people, give them the heads up. This is 9 minutes long. I'll cut it off when court comes back, but this shows what happened around the car attack last night. So thank you very much for tuning in. And content advisory, this is disturbing.
That building in the distance. Here goes a car coming close to the crowd. The building in the distance is the Hennepin County Government Center. Here goes a car going through the crowd.
Fuck you! Fuck you! Everybody okay? I'm okay.
Switch. In a minute. So it doesn't look like anybody was hurt. We'll come back over here. Again, that was a car that just drove through the crowd here, the government center. The driver is now taking a left down 5th Street. He was able to sit at the light and sort of escape through there. And it looks like everybody's okay from what we could hear and see. They had cars blocking, and I'm not sure what happened there. But that's literally been an issue here in Minneapolis.
Hello everyone, my name is Matt Allen. I'm with Justice Frontline Aid.
The Marshall Group
is here today.
Block people.
First of all, I hope to make sure everybody's okay. If you haven't or you haven't been checked on already, please make sure you reach out to someone in a yellow vest. We'll get you to a medic and we will get you
Justice Frontline Aid
and situated. The plan is still to move. We will not let this distract us. We will not let this dissuade us. That is the plan. I can understand that there is some fear with that. But allow me to let you know that you have a bunch of people here that are determined to make sure you are safe throughout this entire experience. Anybody who is willing to be up in the front, we're going to need at least one more car up at the front. He drove up on the sidewalk, which is why if we are going to be moving, it is going to be easier for us to be in the street. It is actually safer for you at this point to be on the street because that's what the thought process is. I'll just drive up on the sidewalk. So please, we have this locked down. Do not let this dissuade you because this is the kind of stuff they're trying to do. We got his plates, we got his description, he ain't going nowhere, he's not getting far, he's already hit a bunch of people, so that's not how this night ends. How this night ends is with all of us taking care of each other, all right? We already lost one with Deanna Marie. We're not gonna let that happen again, I promise you that. I promise you that. We are not gonna let that happen again. So let's get in the street, let's get ready to move, let's get ready to march, let's get together. Let's get together, let's get strong. This is for Daunte.
We just had a car go through the crowd. This is the Hennepin County Government Center behind us, and folks have gathered out here at the Hennepin County Government Center after the first day of jury selection for the Kim Potter trial for manslaughter for killing Daunte Wright, 20-year-old unarmed Daunte Wright during a traffic stop. You see the cars right here are sort of moving up. These are cars put together by the protesters. A lot of the marshals have been trying to make sure that the place continues to stay safe from car attacks. Well, a car attack just happened. There was a car that drove up onto the sidewalk around the cars and worked its way through the crowd, hitting numerous people. It seems like there's been no serious injuries. There's medics out here, there's marshals out here. I guess his car has been reported to the authorities. Again, we've had numerous car attacks here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and it's a continuation throughout the country. Since movement for Black Lives has started. Counter-protesters or counter people in the population have used their cars as weapons to attack the crowds. So that's what we just saw here.
Computer going first. Oh, yes. You ready, Counsel? Okay, we're ready, Deputy. Thank you. Hello, Miss 30. Please have a seat. And you may remove your mask. Okay, how are you doing? Thank you for being so patient. You're one of our last jurors today. I just have a couple of questions, okay? Now, you said on the questionnaire that you had a somewhat negative general impression of the defendant, and I am wondering whether or not you can promise to base, if you're chosen as a juror, if you can promise to render your verdict, whether guilty or not guilty, based solely on the evidence that you hear in this case and not on any general impressions that you may have of defendant or Mr. Wright. Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay. And you can do that. You can also not base your verdict on anything that you heard before the case started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You stated that you live in on the south side of Minneapolis.
Yes.
A lot of places in the community have been affected by police-related killings. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Well, mainly what I was talking about is the George Floyd situation that happened, and that's really affected the Southside community.
Okay, and I think I know the answer, but in what way, in your view?
Well, yeah, a lot of people have negative, viewings of the police, but I think it's a worldwide issue that has pretty much, come up recently with a lot of people of color, being killed by police and brutality and whatnot.
Okay. What is your general impression of police?
I know that police, not every officer is bad or racist or, out to go kill somebody of color, but I definitely do think that there could be a relation to that.
Okay, so you recognize that there are some cops that do bad things and other cops that don't. And
Yeah.
Each person in law enforcement should be judged on an individual basis. Do you
Right.
agree with that statement?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You stated that you or your family have been victims of crimes, and I'm wondering what their police interactions were with respect to those crimes. First of all, did they report the crimes to the police?
Over the years, there's been so many different interactions, but the ones off the top of my head, yeah, they have been reported to police.
And what was the reaction that they had to how the police handled the situation? Satisfied, not satisfied?
There's certain situations that they were satisfied, others that they weren't. Things that it's out of the officer's hands sometimes. It's just the law and what they can do, what they can enforce.
Okay. Have any of those interactions with police in those circumstances make you biased against police officers in general?
No. Like
Okay.
I said, I know that certain officers can be like that and others aren't.
Okay. Have you personally had any negative interactions with police?
No.
Okay. You stated that your uncle's been tased. Can you tell me a little bit about the circumstances there?
He's always, all his life, he's been on and off hard drugs, and he's had different interactions, different problems when it comes to his mental health. And on one specific occasion, he was threatening to commit suicide, and
I'm pretty sure like he got tased like off of a bridge or something like that.
Okay.
For his own safety.
All right.
So he didn't hurt himself.
All right. Were you critical at all of how the police handled that situation?
No, I didn't. I mean, I wasn't involved personally, so I didn't feel no way about it. I know how he can be, and I understand like the circumstances.
Is there anything about that situation that makes you think you shouldn't be a juror in this case?
No.
You check the box that some family members have been accused of crimes. Do you feel that in those situations justice was done?
For the most part.
Okay. Are there any situations where you did not believe that justice was done? And if so, can you explain?
There's just been certain situations where like I said, it wasn't handled the way that we would have liked it to be handled, but at the same time, it wasn't always like an officer's fault. It could have been the law, and like that's just what they could do and couldn't do.
Could you elaborate on that situation?
Yeah, so there's been like one time I had a family member who had like gotten into a physical altercation with somebody, and they were kind of trying to explain their side of the story, but other people were kind of jumping in trying to explain theirs, and the officers just weren't really trying to hear it because of like the interruptions. They only wanted the one person to talk, and they pretty much just left the situation because of they kept warning the people around to like you know, not interrupt and like to mind their own business, and they didn't, so they pretty much left, which,
okay.
I mean, I feel they shouldn't have just left, but I guess I understand.
All right. When you filled, I'm sorry I'm going to be asking these personal questions, okay. When you filled out your questionnaire, you were pregnant and you were having severe vomiting and nausea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to ask you this, but are you still pregnant?
Yes.
Okay. And are you still having severe vomiting and nausea?
Yeah, and throughout my whole pregnancy, I've like at times had to like go to the ER and check into the hospital because it just gets so bad that there's nothing medicine or really anything can do.
Okay. How often does this happen where you feel nauseous and you feel like vomiting?
Well, that happens every day, multiple times throughout the day, but where it's gotten to the point that like I've had to go into the ER, it's been about maybe 6 times.
Okay, when's the last time you had to go to the ER?
I believe it was at the end of October.
Okay. Do you think that given your present problems with your pregnancy that you'd be able to sit as a juror in this case?
Well, I think for the most part I can. I felt the need to put that in there because it's for my life it's been unpredictable. So it's not like I can, you know, specifically say like, you know, there could be a day that like I'm not available, you know, or I have, you know, I'm in the hospital. So.
Okay. How often do you feel nauseous during a week or a month?
Well, like I said, every day, multiple times a day. I just do the best I can to manage it. Like, you know, there's only so much I can do. But, and then I would say that in an instance where I can't keep anything down and I have to be on IV fluids, that's happens like, I mean, I'm about to be 7 months, so if it's happened about 6 times, it's been maybe, you know, once a month.
Okay. And it's unpredictable, you said.
Yeah.
And you feel that way.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what the schedule is. I think I told you it was 9 to about 4:30 with 20-minute breaks in the morning and 20-minute break in the afternoon, and a lunch break of about an hour. Is that schedule going to present a problem for you?
No, it shouldn't.
Okay. But you're still thinking that it's unpredictable when you feel well enough to come in?
Well, I would say for the most part, I can always kind of make myself feel okay enough to be able to show up and whatnot. But like I said, I just put that in there just in case, like, I had one of these days where I had to, like, go be on IV fluids, and, you know, that's something that would be out of my control.
Okay. And you said the last time that you were on IV was when?
I believe it was the end of October.
Okay. So you have some concerns about being on a jury?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Counsel, could we do a sidebar?
So thanks for joining us this afternoon. I believe by the last count we're at 9 jurors. Is that correct? Sorry, I think that's right. But the process has been moving along pretty quick. Sorry, I should say we will double check the figures with the jury, numbers, what the jury composition seems to be, and so forth. And we'll be keeping track of that on our landing page on our website. So I'll just introduce that quickly, which should have the latest data. It'll be here, Kim Potter trial, up at the top, just hit the banner, and we will have that updated with what we know about the jury, number of strikes, and so forth. And so right now they're on sidebar. They use radios to talk to each other so we can't hear them. So obviously so this woman may have a medical issue preventing her from being on the jury, and so, obviously jurors are coming from a lot of different points in life, and that's part of this process. I'll also mention really quickly, we have the new Unicorn Riot Live Twitter, so we're putting our live court updates into this new second Twitter account. So please give that a follow if you're a Twitter user, and that's where we're keeping the breaking news, the twists and turns, the lines of questioning, the jurors coming in and out of this, and then when the main phase of the trial starts, we'll have the information there too. I'm not sure if folks remember, but during the Derek Chauvin trial, Judge Cahill was usually pretty consistent about going to sidebar, covering his mouth with his mask so that people couldn't see what he was doing on the sidebar. And I don't know if folks have ever gone to federal court, but you will see in federal court that they use white noise to hide the noise. So you'd still see them talking, I guess, in this.
Just a couple follow-up questions, all right? Do you think you'll be physically able to sit as a juror in this case? Yeah. Okay. And you're willing to serve?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ng or Mr. Gray, do you have questions?
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Ng. On behalf of Officer Potter, I have a right to ask you questions, and I'm with Mr. Gray and Amanda Montgomery. I don't want to pry into your physical condition, but I do want to ask you some follow-up questions. And I don't mean to offend you about a private matter, but we are interested in seeing how you are. Okay? It's fair to say, as I listen to you, that you feel somewhat nauseous almost every day.
Every day.
Could you come to the microphone? So I'm a little hard of hearing too.
Every day.
Okay. And that feeling of nausea sometimes results in vomiting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that can happen every day.
Yes.
And you assume that if you were picked as a jury, that the feeling of nausea would not necessarily just go away.
Right.
And you would be in the courthouse listening to the jury, listening to the case, and then interrupting the trial to vomit on occasion. Would that be a fair statement?
I mean, like I said, it's out of my control, so if it's something that happens, yeah.
And your view is that it would likely happen?
I don't know. I don't just, like, necessarily, I feel nauseous all the time, but I don't always throw up, so.
And you're having a baby in February, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've been in the ER about 6 times?
Yeah.
And that is for dehydration?
It's pretty much just because I can't stop throwing up, so.
So they put something in your arm and with a drug to stop that?
Yep.
Okay. And has the medical staff indicated that they can stop it in the future?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, is it going to happen in the future, if you know?
Yeah, it could happen in the future.
Okay. All right. So they haven't been able to control it in a sense of stopping it. They can control it at the time it happens. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, exactly. I've basically been prescribed medicine that helps me control it throughout the day.
So there's a possibility that during this trial, if you were to be selected, that at any given day you could be hospitalized.
Yep.
Okay. And that would take a day or two, or however long it would be.
About a day. It takes a few hours.
And then I assume you're wiped out after that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it takes another day to recover.
I mean, no, not necessarily, but.
And obviously this medical condition of yours is something you didn't want to have happen, but it's ongoing. Is that right?
Yes.
May I discuss the matter with the court again?
Yes.
You're going to be excused from this jury. I really hope you start feeling better through your pregnancy. Okay, so, and congratulations. I hope everything goes well, and I'm sure you're very excited about having your new baby. Okay, thank you so much. Deputy, could you hold up on bringing the another juror in? Okay, I granted the defense motion to strike for cause over the state's objection. I believe that this panel member, she did say that she's been hospitalized and that if that were to happen, she would be not able to come in that day. We can't be stopping the trial for a day while she is in the hospital needing medical attention. This is a very, I think, unusual pregnancy because of the hospitalizations and the need for getting IVs. So for that reason, I granted the defense motion to strike. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for waiting and thank you for your patience. You may remove your mask, okay? All right. I don't have very many questions for you. Thank you for coming today. Excuse me, I'm having some problems with I have your questionnaire on my computer, so. Okay, it looks like you haven't really heard very much about this case and that you're neutral with respect to your impressions on the parties and that you don't really have any facts and you're going to be open-minded and listen to all the evidence then? Okay?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. Now, you indicated that you were a victim of a crime and the police were called because of a home break-in robbery. Was it one incident or two?
Boy, this was a long time ago. Maybe it was two. What?
Excuse me, could the juror speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, the microphone's right there. Maybe you
I don't exactly remember. It was quite a while ago. It might have been one for sure, but we've had other times where we've had to call the police.
Okay, were you satisfied with the police response?
Yes.
Okay. Any complaints about how you were treated?
No.
All right. You stated that you were a security person at a church. What was
was okay and there weren't problems with any of the people at church, and that no people went after the pastors or the staff there.
Okay.
So we were kind of like volunteer security detail, I guess.
Okay. And did you encounter situations where you had to take control of the situation?
I did not.
Okay. In response to your views on Black Lives Matter, you indicated you were very unfavorable. Can you explain why you formed that opinion and what is the basis for that?
Well, I think they just go too far overboard. I think that everybody is equal in all ways, and so I think they go too far one way.
Can you explain what you mean by what they're doing that you think is going too far?
I think they just get too excited about being against. I don't know. They're just. I'm not sure I can explain it.
Take your time.
They just seem like they're more interested in getting on the news than really doing anything to help Black people.
Okay. So it's more the publicity that they're seeking rather than really...
I think it is.
Okay. In response to the question, have you, a family member, or someone close to you ever been employed by or had any dealings with the Hennepin County District Court, you checked yes. And that was only with respect to your guardianship, or were there other instances?
Oh, that's correct.
Okay, that's the only time you've had any dealings with the Hennepin County District Court?
I'm sorry, what?
That was the only time that you've had any dealings with Hennepin County District Court, is getting appointed a guardianship?
Well, my daughter had been arrested for, I think, DUI.
Okay.
So
and do you think that she was treated fairly?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And you thought justice was done in her case, or do you have complaints about it?
No, I think justice was done. I don't have any complaints.
Okay. In response to the question, do you want to serve as a juror, you checked yes and not sure. I know that you don't really want to have to come to Minneapolis, so, and that's understandable. But your question on the questionnaire anyway, will jurors be required to be fully vaccinated? I'll answer that question for you. We don't have that requirement. You indicated, I think, that should be required. We don't require proof of vaccination. But what we do require is that masks be worn at all times while in the courthouse, and during the trial, you will be required to wear a mask. And the only time that you're allowed to take your mask off is if you're in the witness box, or if you're taking a sip of water and you're sitting as a juror. Would you feel comfortable being a juror in this case under those circumstances?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you think we should know about you and your ability to sit as a fair and impartial juror in this case?
No.
Okay. And do you think you can be fair to both sides here?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Gray?
Good afternoon. This is 32. That's your name here. You're number 32 juror. I have read your questionnaire. And would you change anything in this today?
No.
Okay. And has anything happened since you answered this questionnaire that perhaps the lawyers representing the state and representing Kim Potter should know about?
No.
You mentioned in your questionnaire, pull it out here. You say you're good as a jury deliberation as long as I have all of my medications, that I'm good. And you're asked about the medications, and you say no, just what I listed previously. I have looked through this document twice. I missed them. Maybe I missed them.
Well, I think I was thinking about like if we were sequestered or something, then I have some eye drops that I need to take. That's all.
All right, but it wasn't listed. I didn't find it.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I'd like to, the last question here, you want to serve as a juror, you say yes and not sure, and you mention having to go to Minneapolis is not something you look forward to, but you also realize you have a civic duty to be a juror. Is this the first time you're a juror?
Yes.
And can you handle it, even knowing, as the judge has told you, that not everybody, maybe everybody will be fully vaccinated, but it's not required. The mask is required.
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay. And you can be fair and impartial?
Yes.
Both sides?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have. We'll pass the jury, Your Honor.
Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Juror 32. Thank you for bearing with us, being patient all afternoon. Appreciate it. When you indicate, as Mr. Gray asked you about, not wanting to come to Minneapolis, why is that?
Because of all the violence that's been going on around the downtown areas.
Yeah. And, I know you had indicated that the community was negatively affected because of the demonstrations and things that were going on for just that same fear, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked about groups, a group like Black Lives Matter taking things too far. Do you think that they're involved in that kind of violence that makes people unsafe?
Maybe. I don't know for sure.
Do you have concerns about that?
Well, after coming downtown today, I don't know, maybe I was mistaken, but I just hear things.
Yeah, and what do you mean you hear things? What kind of
Well,
things?
you hear things on TV about, all the shootings and stuff like that.
And the reason I ask about Black Lives Matter in that context is because when you talk about taking things too far, do you think that's the kind of things that they have taken too far?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
You said they take things too far. And
with their protesting and violence like that.
So that's kind of part of what maybe makes it not so safe in Minneapolis anymore.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
I know it's been a number of months since you filled this out, so I don't expect you to have perfect recall of everything, but there was the question that had different statements, and then you had to say whether you agree or disagree. Do you recall that?
Sort of.
Okay. You said that, okay, the statement is, police in my community make me feel safe, and you said you strongly agree with that.
I do.
Okay. Why did you strongly agree with that, or do you?
Because, well, just recently I had a hip dislocation in my house, and they came out like almost, 10 minutes there at my house. So, I don't know, I think they do a good job.
Okay. And they do a good job of helping with, I guess, protecting you from the kind of violence that concerns you about when you have this.
I hope so.
Yeah. One of the phrases was, I do not trust the police, and you strongly disagreed with that. So you do trust them.
Yes.
You trust them to help you with medical calls?
Yes, or whatever.
Yeah. And then one of the statements is, because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions they make. And you agreed with that, do you recall?
Yes.
So when you agreed with that, what did you think it meant about second guessing their decisions?
Can you repeat the statement?
Yep, it's a long one. It's kind of hard to follow. So I'm glad to. Because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions they make while on duty. And you said that you agree with that.
Well, for the most part, I guess it depends on the circumstance,
So, and I think my question had been, like, in that phrase, when you answered it, what did you take second guess to mean?
If they second guessing. Well, I guess I wouldn't want to say that the officer is unable to make a mistake, but I think that a person can be, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I thought that I knew what I meant, but maybe I didn't. I just know that if you second guess everything that a police officer does, nothing would get done, and they wouldn't be able to keep law and order, I guess.
And so it sounds like you're saying that, and I'm sorry to just keep probing you. I mean, these are the questions we have to ask, right? Because we have to have a fair and impartial jury. Not every person is right for every case, right? And that's part of why we pick juries this way.
True.
Right? What person may be good for one case may not be for every case. So that's why I get to ask. And it sounds like, you have a lot of faith and trust in police officers because they do keep you safe, and you want it to stay that way and not sort of face this violence that sort of infecting Minneapolis.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, I know you want to do your civic duty and you want to be fair. I completely understand that. But like I said, not every case. So this case obviously involves the conduct of a police officer, right? Do you think that you would, this mindset about trusting police officers and wanting to trust them and being important and not second guess them is a sort of a bias you would take with you as a juror in this case?
Take a bias?
Yeah, and maybe bias is too strong of a word, but it's a mindset that you have that it's important that that police officers can do their jobs. You trust them. You want them to put an end to this violence. You want them to be there for you, and you're afraid that if you have to second guess what officers do, it'll keep them from doing their job.
Yes.
That's kind of a mindset you have, right?
Right.
So this case involving a police officer may not be the right case for somebody that has that mindset. Do you see what I mean?
No.
Okay. Tell me why not. If you're saying no.
I don't think I'm biased. I think I would need all the facts before I can make a decision or an opinion. That's all I know.
Okay. And maybe bias was too strong of a word even. I mean, mindset maybe? Is that something that you think you really can set aside in a case involving a police officer?
Judge, I objected to this improper way here. He's questioned her now on this for 5 times.
All right, I want to ask you the question. Do you remember it?
Pardon?
Do you remember the question that was asked? Do you want to re-ask that
Sure.
same question?
And I know these are not easy questions to answer, and we have time, so don't worry if you want to take some time to think about it. But we've been talking about this mindset, that you expressed in your answers to these questions. These are important things to you. I'm not making judgments about you at all, right? It comes down to this question of right juror, right person for the right case, right? So the way that you've answered shows that you have some strong feelings about police officers and the work they do and needing them to continue doing it by not having people second guess what they do, right? And yet as a juror, you would have to decide the facts about an officer accused of crimes because of their conduct. Do you think that you're the right juror for this case then?
I do.
Why?
Because once I get the facts, I can go through them and make a fair decision. That's all. Because I'm not one that would just willy-nilly say, okay, you're guilty or you're innocent or whatever.
And, we question you at length about this now because, of course, you have to be assured of that now, right? You can't realize later, I can't set that aside. So, you've not been on jury duty before and you've never sat on a jury, but is it that you can tell us for sure now you would not let that mindset affect your deliberations if you were a juror?
That's correct.
The objection is sustained. It's been asked and answered a number of times. Please.
Yeah, may I be heard about that, please? Okay. I will move on then. I noticed that you indicated that apparently you have some experience in the Army. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When was that?
That was in 1983, I believe.
Okay. Quite some time ago?
Yes, quite some time ago.
How long were you in?
Less than 2 years.
And was that an important part of your life then? I mean,
It was different. I didn't enjoy it all that much.
okay. And that's presumably why you got out, right?
That's correct.
And you indicated, you talked about being a watchman or security at your church. You're still doing that?
No,
Okay. When did you stop doing that?
because it was taking up too much of my time. I mean, we had to do 2 services on Sunday, and then we had to do a lot of training in between times, and it just got to be too much.
Okay. Why did the church need to have that kind of security?
I think most churches do nowadays, just because of the atmosphere of the times, I guess. But we've had them at our church for several years now.
And you do have, make sure I get this right, you do own a firearm.
I do.
And do you have a permit for it, or do you just have it at home?
I did have a permit and it expired, and I haven't renewed it.
And so you went through the training to get your permit, correct?
Well, that was part of it. We didn't have to get we didn't have to carry, but I decided I'd like to, so.
Okay. I see what you're saying. You didn't have to carry while being a watchman at the church.
Well, you couldn't unless you had a permit,
Right.
but it wasn't required to have a firearm when you were on duty.
So that training you did, the firearm training, was approximately how long ago?
Oh, that's about 3-4 years ago.
And that's again another thing that, an outside the courtroom experience that you've had that you'd have to set aside to be a juror in this case. Do you understand that?
No.
Okay. So, if you received training, firearm training, there may not be evidence about that in this case. So you'd have to rely on what you hear in the courtroom and not the training that you had. Does that make sense?
No. I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're saying.
All right. When you got a permit, you went through the training class, the firearm training.
Yes.
Okay. And so you got some training there.
Yes.
Obviously, this case involves a police officer who gets training, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so, as a juror, you would be required to rely on what you hear in the courtroom about firearm training, not the training that you had.
Yes, that's true.
Can you do that?
Of course.
Okay. Mr. Gray asked you about the medications. It sounds like it's just eye drops or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So nothing that would affect your ability to concentrate in
Oh,
court.
no.
Sometimes sometimes I can't even read my own handwriting. But so I've asked you a lot of questions. I hope I haven't pried too much into your personal life. Is there anything about your answers that you'd want to add to or change since I asked them before?
No.
Can you excuse me just for a moment, please? Your Honor may have a moment.
Yes.
I'll just note that you can really see Potter interacting with her attorneys pretty animatedly in this cutaway here, as they're trying to decide what this potential juror, who seems to have been a former, private security, would be on the street.
Thank you, Juror 32. Your Honor, we would exercise a peremptory.
Thank you very much for coming in. But you're excused from this jury, but I appreciate you taking all the time that you did. Have a good evening. All right, counsel, I will see you all at 8:30 so we can discuss what we discussed in chambers, okay?
Killed in a car attack a few months ago.
Exactly.
And then there was...
That's what public outcry look like. We tired of this happening to our people. Daunte Wright should be here. She meant to grab a taser. He shouldn't be dead. Fight or flight. He was scared. It's a lot of critics saying don't support it because he was running. Now, after all the murders you done seen, since George Floyd, you gonna stare at me in my face and tell me fight or flight's not something, and he wasn't maybe scared and try to run? That same script, that same story has to end. 2 days ago, there was 2 people killed by the police in the same day. And the stories came out right away. They always, now they're so afraid they can put whatever they want to and get the people to be confused. Daunte Wright should be alive. He did not deserve to die. Period. Period. You know how many times I ran from the police? Just because I'm out here with no driver's license, you think you won't take me down? I don't deserve to live? This is a common problem in our black community when it comes to
a driver's license like Philando Castile, pulled over 50-some times, to then go ahead in legislation and pass a law that says if you have one of these right here hanging in your window, they can pull you over now. They made that law while I was alive. Now I'm witnessing a young brother got killed over it. They didn't find out he had a warrant until after he got pulled over.
Facts.
So you can't bring that in.
So thanks for tuning in today, folks. Here's a video from our member Akichita, who was out filming the demo outside the courthouse yesterday. So I'm going to let this play for a while, and we're going to be pushing out, more videos out through our YouTube and our Vimeo platforms, our Facebook platforms, Instagram. So just, try to tune into all our different platforms. I'll just hold this one moment as we go out. They ended on that note with that prospective juror. Take a look at our website if you're curious about what's going on with the trial. You can look at some of the legal documents. All the links are in there. Kim Potter trial linked up at the top of the page. And if you can support our work at Donate, the donate link is up there. That makes a huge difference as well. So again, we do really appreciate your support. That's basically what's made us possible to keep bringing you in-depth coverage of these social issues, especially around issues like police brutality in the Twin Cities for 6 years now. So thank you all very much. I'm going to let this play through, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Should be about 9 o'clock Central. We saw today that they started before 9 a.m., so I think we'll try to be fairly ready on the trigger just in case they pop up early. Thanks again for joining us. I do really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you. Have a good night.
Because every single second you have the opportunity to take a breath, Daunte Wright can't. That's why I go hard at what I do. There's a lot of brothers out here that have passed away senselessly, including gun violence, period. He deserved to live. He deserved to breathe right now. His mother, his father, his family, his brother, all his siblings, they need the community's support right now. Let's bring awareness around that. We're going to bring awareness around the realest things right now and wonder why somebody would be out here, because we know you wouldn't want it to be your kid next. Because it doesn't have a color underneath it, but you know what? Black people, this is like the icing on our cake. The police artists, we already have so much adversity to overcome. Enough is enough. Our people do not deserve to die in the streets like this. He should have been rushed immediately to the hospital. As far as them putting these guns on us and then telling us not to move, you done shot me. And you still got your guns out holding it over these bodies. And they're bleeding out. And sometimes they doing CPR when there's a wound in the neck. And you're not supposed to. But no one wants to talk about some of these other underlying factors and changing rules and laws that lead to some of these deaths. And our system's not working for our people. George Floyd guilty verdict, which happened right here, was because the people, when you turn them cameras around, supporting this and having a passion in their heart to represent in Minnesota. So don't let it be confused. We know what's going on. And we got a lot of groups and organizations playing their role. Find a way to do your part. Find a way to spread the message. Make these people feel it. Don't give up on this family from seeking justice. Because the last thing we're going to allow is for a Rittenhouse trial to get off on something like that, and now allow another person in the state of Minnesota to violate someone's civil rights and get away with it. So they have to draw the line in the United States of America. Joe Biden, he's in Minnesota right now. We hope you're watching and paying attention. He's here to talk about an infrastructure bill.
You need some of that.
Our people are suffering. Daunte Wright is gone. There's nothing you can do right now to fix that other than make sure she's held accountable. That's what you can do right now. You can speak on this situation today. We demand the leaders to step up and speak out that she was wrong. She should have been able to identify she had a 9mm in her hand and not a taser.
Right.
You have to be able to identify that. If we don't make a bill that specifically says if you grab your gun and kill somebody, but you thought it was a taser, you're going to be charged. It's that basic. Let's get to the basics of the problem. How are we going to solve something? That's a little indication that Daunte Wright could have been alive. How can we save the next person? So as we bring awareness, is what we do it for our people. And right solutions. We all got solutions, but putting our hands together is where it's really gonna make noise. And the manslaughter charge really is not enough. There needs to be murder charges. Keith Ellison, let me make it very loud and clear. Joe Biden, let me make it very loud and clear. We need murder charges. Murder charges.
Murder charges. Murder charges.
When I say murder, y'all say charges. Murder!
Charges!
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 We have to echo that. There has to be accountability when you get something like this confused in the state of Minnesota and around the country. It's unfair to Daunte Wright to not be here because that's a clear violation of your civil rights. That's why we're here.
So we're here to create space for the Daunte Wright family and for Daunte Wright. It's the first day of the Kim Potter trial. They're choosing the jury, and so we're just out here trying to make a statement that, you know, we want a fair trial, but we also are hoping for a guilty verdict, and that, you know, we stand in community and that we support the families, and, you know, we're here for the people. We support the people. With these situations, I think we always expect the worst, but hope for the best. We know that the system can be corrupt, and so, I mean, hoping for guilty, of course. We're hoping to see some justice and accountability on the fact that she did kill Daunte Wright. I mean, I guess that's all we can really hope for, especially with these situations. We know when it comes to black and brown bodies that the system will do anything it can to not hold police accountable. You know, their thin blue line runs strong, and they try to protect each other as much as they can within the police system and within the judicial system. So we're just hoping that this family will receive accountability and that we'll get a guilty verdict. Power to the people.
Hello. Thank you, brother. I just want to speak to y'all real quick about what's going on in your city, behind closed doors. Brooklyn Center's holding meetings in regards to curfews in their own backyard. I saw about 150 people in the meeting last night making decisions for a city before jurisdiction has even arrived. Please make that make sense. We are out here discussing Daunte Wright today, mourning Daunte Wright today, and they're having meetings cloaked in darkness. I don't recall during the Jarek Chauvin trial anyone who's active destroying anything. I don't recall us screaming and shouting in the streets. We all sat on our hands and we waited patiently, respecting the system, right? But we can't even get enough respect enough to know what's being said about us behind closed doors.
That's great.
I'll say it again. We can't even get enough respect enough to find out what's going on with us behind closed doors. I haven't seen any destruction of property in Brooklyn Center throughout this summertime. I've heard of rubber bullets flying at children. I've seen flashbangs in the streets. I've seen medics having to wipe blood off people's bodies. For what? Because we're asking for basic civil rights. The same civil rights we've been asking for that we celebrate in January. We pretend to acknowledge in the Mississippi of the North in February. And now we're sitting here discussing a young man, a child. For what? Because he was scared? You don't think that we're afraid speaking in front of these mics? Having our cameras on faces? In fear of retaliation? When will the state of Minnesota respect black existence? When will they actually show us love? When will they stop being fake and phony and deceitful? It's shameful. All the big officials were on this meeting last night. No one spoke. No one spoke. The mayor spoke. Curfew. Brooklyn Center. Raise your hands if you knew that was happening. Media. Council. When does the bullshit stop? You have fathers out here taking time out of their day for people who we don't even know, but we love because that could have been our kids.
That's right.
That's right.
Minnesota, what are we doing? Do you actually value black lives? Do those Black Lives Matter signs in your front yards, do they mean something to you? Or is that a security blanket for you? Please understand, this is our lives. A lot of us don't sleep when we see these things. I hold back tears when I see these things. I'm not gonna shame myself in front of y'all. I'm damn for sure not gonna give you that power. But know that we hurt every day. Every day. And why? Ask yourselves why. Because we exist? Daunte Wright. We haven't even finished discussing what's going on with George Floyd. That's how shameful this state is. Y'all want to sweep cops up under the rug and send them home like nothing ever happened. We didn't forget. We did not forget about George Floyd, and we damn for sure aren't going to forget about Daunte Wright. I'm looking at all my activist friends who can see me currently. I challenge all y'all. I need all of y'all outside. I know we work. I know this journey is hard. I know it hurts. I know it's frustrating. But we need to work together to impact this city the way I know that we can. There are a lot of leaders out here right now. State of Minnesota, please stop playing with black lives, because damn it, our life is supposed to matter. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you.
I'm here standing with the Wrights family, you know, nothing right but standing with the Wrights. just hoping that, I just hope that, we can know the difference from manslaughter and murder, because we knew the difference from a taser and Glock. So I felt that, what's understood don't need to be explained. I feel that, she should be, get the verdict of guilty because we know murder when we see murder. She knew the difference between, a taser and killing a young, innocent black man. And I felt that, it was a cover-up, and I feel like they tried to play a part that it was an act of a mistake. And I feel like I'm just waiting, and I'm waiting with the family, I'm waiting with the community, and I feel like, if they don't get us the right verdict, it's time to bring it back to the basics, and I feel like it's time to show the city that we're not gonna take none of that no more, and we're not gonna sit on our hands anymore, because I feel like, like she said, the police work with each other, the juries work with each other. They know what's in the end, learning from what happened in Wisconsin, and what happened with George Floyd, we know that it's a lot of stuff that goes on in the courthouse that they don't expose to the community, that they work, against what's right. And I feel like, do what's right and make it right for the Wright family, because at the end of the day, we know murder.
Say his name. Daunte Wright. 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 This is jury selection. Let's pray they select the right jury. And that is fair. And they don't select the jury like they did over in Wisconsin. It will never make sense to go around and ask a jury, did you ever hear about Daunte Wright? If they say yes, you're discounted from being a juror. So if you're conscious and you're aware and you're woke, they call it, you're disqualified. It makes sense. This is the judicial system in the United States of America. We got some quick fixes. We need to sit down at this table that y'all been having behind our back and talk about it. Enough running from it. Give me 15 minutes with you. And let us lay down what we talking about. Everything's not happening in no vacuum. Our people are hurting. Our people are suffering. And as we stand here, there's more people gathering because they're aware. So to every person that's in that jury spot, they can't even look up this case. They're not supposed to look into it. They don't want you to. And there's a lot of things that the judges normally do that make the jury have to select different things. All of this needs to be reviewed. And while you're here, President, this is what we want on national television, just like this one. There was a man by the name of Daunte Wright that is in jail right now.
What? Yeah.
We have no reason, we don't know why Daunte Wright is in jail in Wisconsin right now. We have to use these platforms for our people.
Facts. Let's talk about it.
Whatever happened to him, it needs to be addressed. So if you know something out there, organize something. Because right now, they try to silence your voice when you speak up. So a lot of times, it is almost forced on you to be quiet. They want us to be silent. There's still 646 people that were arrested that are still fighting their charges for standing up for our people. Some of them are probably here. There's victims of this protesting that are being mistreated and are tired of this endless fight. But we'll never give up. We'll never lose hope to hopefully continue to bring awareness to save the next black man from dying, getting pulled over because he had something hanging from his rear view mirror and she got him mistaken between a 9mm and a taser. If we can save one life at a time, we'll do that. Everyone out here today, the family needs this continued support. Let's remember that. So as they take breaks, or if we might see them, which we will, I'm sure, every day, let's remind them the community got their back. And we will continue to say his name. Say his name.